Tiwa Savage. Her story. A Star is Born. Tiwa Savage was born on February 5, 1980, in Lagos State, Nigeria. The streets were busy, noisy, and full of life. From a very young age, she loved music. Anytime there was a radio playing, Tiwa would stop whatever she was doing just to listen. Even as a small child, she would sing loudly and confidently, as if she was already on a big stage. Her parents noticed her talent early. Though they were not rich, they believed in education and discipline. When Tiwa was just 11 years old, her family moved to London, United Kingdom, in search of better opportunities. The change was not easy. Everything felt strange. The weather, the people, even the food. Little Tiwa missed Nigeria deeply. In school, she struggled with fitting in. Her accent was different. Some classmates laughed at her. But whenever she sang, everything changed. Music became her escape. She joined her school choir and slowly gained confidence again. Teachers praised her voice. They saw something special in her. One afternoon after choir practice, her music teacher said, "Tiwa, your voice is rare. Don't waste it." That sentence stayed in her heart forever. From that day, she knew music was not just a hobby, it was her destiny. Dreams bigger than fear. As Tiwa grew older, her love for music became stronger. But her parents wanted her to get a good education first. They believed talent was important, but education was protection. Tiwa agreed, though music was always in her heart. She studied business administration at the University of Kent. By day, she attended classes like every other student. By night, she performed at small events, birthday parties, and talent shows. Sometimes there was no money, only applause. But she didn't give up. At one small show, a stranger approached her and said, "You belong on bigger stages." It sounded like a dream, but Tiwa held on to those words. After graduating, she made a bold decision. Instead of settling for a normal office job, she applied to study music professionally at the Berklee College of Music in the United States. It was not easy. The school was expensive. The competition was tough. But Tiwa fought for her dream, and she was accepted. When the acceptance letter arrived, she cried for hours. It felt like the first major door had opened. The struggle behind the glitter. Life in the United States was not a fairy tale. Tiwa studied hard at Berklee, often staying up all night practicing. She worked part-time jobs to support herself. There were days she barely had enough money to eat well. But she never complained. After school, she began auditioning for backup singing roles. Many times, she was rejected. Doors closed. Calls never came back. Still, she kept pushing. Finally, her breakthrough came when she became a backup singer for famous artists like George Michael, Kelly Clarkson, and others. She performed in big concerts, standing behind stars while thousands of people screamed in excitement. On stage, she was smiling. But inside, she sometimes felt invisible. One night after a performance, Tiwa sat alone in her room and whispered, "I don't want to remain in the shadow forever. I want my own light." That night changed everything. The American Idol test. Tiwa decided to challenge herself further. She auditioned for American Idol, one of the biggest music shows in the world. Standing before the judges was terrifying. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating fast. She sang with all her soul. The judges were impressed. She passed the audition and made it to the next stage. Though she didn't win the competition, something more important happened. She gained global exposure. People began to notice her name. Still, music success did not come instantly. The American industry was crowded. It was hard to break through as an African artist. After many disappointments, Tiwa made another bold decision. She said, "If they won't hear me here, then Nigeria will hear me." And that decision changed music history in Africa forever. Returning home to build a new dream. When Tiwa returned to Nigeria, the music industry was growing fast. Afrobeat was rising. Young artists were hungry for success. Producers were experimenting with new sounds. At first, it was not easy. Some people didn't believe in her. Others felt she had been away too long. But Tiwa didn't let that stop her. She worked quietly behind the scenes. Then she met Don Jazzy and Maven Records. When she played her songs for them, they saw her fire immediately. Soon after, she was signed into Maven Records. Her first single, Kele Kele Love, dropped, and Nigeria fell in love with Tiwa Savage. The song was everywhere, on radios, in buses, in clubs, in homes. She became the new female voice of Afrobeat. Her dream had finally found a home. Fame, love, and public pressure. With fame came attention, good and bad. Tiwa became a role model for young women. She proved that women could dominate the Afrobeat industry too. She later married music producer T-Bills. Their wedding was big. The world celebrated with them. People believed it was a fairy tale love story. But behind the cameras, the truth was painful. Arguments, pressure, financial issues, fame stress. Their marriage began to crack under public eyes. Then one day, social media exploded with shocking accusations and emotional videos. Their private pain became public drama. The world was watching. Tiwa cried. She was hurt. She was embarrassed. But she refused to let heartbreak destroy her destiny. Falling, then rising stronger. The marriage eventually ended. It broke her deeply. But in that broken season, something powerful happened. She turned her pain into music. She released Ijoba Sabe, Eminado, All Over, Malo, and many powerful songs that lifted her career even higher than before. She gave birth to her son Jamil, who became her greatest source of strength. She once said in an interview, "My son saved me. He gave me a reason to live again." From that moment, Tiwa Savage stopped living for approval and started living for purpose. Global Queen of Afrobeat. Tiwa Savage didn't remain only a Nigerian star. The world began to notice her. She signed international deals. She performed on global stages. She worked with Beyoncé, Brandy, Sam Smith, and many international stars. In 2020, she became the first Nigerian female artist to be featured on Beyoncé's Lion King, The Gift album. That moment shocked Africa. From Lagos to the world. Tiwa had become a global queen of Afrobeat. The woman behind the crown. Behind the glam, Tiwa is also a woman who has faced depression, fear, shame, and rejection. She has spoken openly about emotional struggles and mental health. She encourages women to be strong, independent, and bold. She once said, "I've cried on stage before. Strength doesn't mean you don't cry. It means you rise again." And rise again she did. The price of success. As Tiwa Savage's fame grew bigger, so did the pressure. Invitations came from everywhere. Concerts, endorsements, interviews, international tours. Sometimes she barely slept. Every smile she gave on stage cost her energy, sweat, and sacrifice. People often said, "Tiwa, you're living the dream." But only she knew the weight behind the dream. There were days she wanted to rest, but work pulled her back. There were nights she cried from exhaustion, but cameras demanded smiles. As a single mother, she carried two lives, hers and Jamil's. One night after a long concert, she sat alone in her hotel room staring at her phone. Her son's voice message played, "Mummy, when are you coming home?" Tears dropped quietly. She whispered, "Soon, my love, soon." She understood that success gives fame, but it also steals time. Breaking records, shattering limits. Tiwa went on to release more powerful songs. Each one was bigger than the last. Awards followed her everywhere, Nigeria, Africa, and beyond. She became the most decorated female African artist. A symbol of African excellence. A voice for women in music. Many young girls began to copy her hairstyle, her fashion, and even her confidence. She didn't just sing music, she inspired movements. Once during an award speech, she said, "This award is for every girl who was told she couldn't make it." The crowd roared. But even as she stood at the top, she never forgot where she came from. Lagos, Lagos, the small streets that shaped her voice. friends, betrayals, and lessons. Not everyone around success comes with pure intentions. As Tiwa rose higher, some friendships changed. People she once trusted disappointed her. Some leaked secrets. Others envied her growth. One painful betrayal cut deep. A close associate tried to sabotage her contract secretly. When the truth came out, Tiwa felt wounded. She asked quietly, "Why would you do this to me?" The person looked away in shame. That day, Tiwa learned a harsh truth. Not everyone who smiles with you is for you. Instead of breaking her, the betrayal made her wiser. She built stronger boundaries and chose her circle carefully. The leaked video storm. One of the most painful moments of her life came when a private video was leaked online. The internet exploded. Blogs were wild. Critics attacked. Some mocked her. For days, Tiwa locked herself indoors. She felt exposed, broken, ashamed. She held her son tightly and cried, "What will people say about your mother?" But something powerful happened. Instead of hiding forever, she stood up. She addressed the world boldly. She didn't beg for sympathy. She took back control of her narrative. And suddenly, millions of women stood with her. They said, "She is human. She is strong. She will survive this." And she did. The stage that healed her. After that storm, Tiwa returned to the stage, not weak, but stronger. Her performance was fire. Her voice carried pain, healing, and power all at once. The crowd sang every word with her. It felt like therapy. As she stood under the stage lights, she whispered inside, "You didn't destroy me. You revealed my strength." From that day on, Tiwa stopped living in fear of public opinion. She lived in truth, motherhood, and purpose. Jamil grew older, more curious, more playful. Whenever Tiwa was home, she gave him full attention. School runs, playtime, bedtime stories. One evening, Jamil asked her, "Mummy, why do people scream when you sing?" Tiwa laughed softly and said, "Because music makes people feel something." He smiled and replied, "Then keep singing forever." Those words felt like a blessing. Motherhood softened her heart and strengthened her purpose. She no longer chased only fame, she chased legacy. African pride on the global stage. Tiwa did not pretend to be American. She proudly carried her African identity everywhere, her accent, her culture, her sound. At international interviews, she spoke proudly of Nigeria. "This is African music," she would say. "This is our sound." The world listened. Soon, Afrobeat became global culture. And Tiwa Savage stood as one of the main queens who carried it across borders. Silence, healing, and self-rediscovery. After years of non-stop work, Tiwa decided to slow down. She traveled quietly. She healed privately. She spent more time away from social media. Some fans worried. Others respected it. During that break, she rediscovered herself, not as a star, but as a woman. She learned, it is okay to rest. It is okay to heal. It is okay to choose peace. When she returned, her music carried deeper wisdom. Still rising, still relevant. Many artists fade with time. Tiwa did the opposite. She evolved. Younger artists began to look up to her as a mentor. Some feared being compared to her. Others proudly called her Big Sister. Despite new trends, Tiwa remained relevant because she constantly reinvented herself without losing her identity. Her message stayed clear. Consistency beats hype. When respect speaks louder than fame. As time passed, Tiwa noticed a change. People no longer spoke about just her beauty, her fashion, or controversies. They now spoke about her impact, her discipline, and her longevity in the industry. At award shows, younger artists bowed slightly when greeting her. Producers listened carefully when she spoke. Journalists asked for her advice, not gossip. Once at a music conference, a young female artist stood up and said nervously, "Ma, because of you, my father allowed me to pursue music." Tiwa's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, she understood that true success is not what you gain, it is what you change in others. The woman who fought her own battles. Behind the success story was a woman who had fought private wars no one saw clearly. Anxiety, loneliness, fear of losing relevance, fear of failure. One night, she confessed quietly to a close friend, "Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the whole world on my shoulders." Her friend replied, "But look at you, you're still standing." And she was. Not because life was easy, but because she refused to give up. Giving back to the streets that raised her. Tiwa never forgot the rough streets of Lagos. She returned quietly to support young talents. Some she helped with school fees, others with music equipment, some with mentorship. She did not always post everything online. One young boy who sold drinks on the street once told her, "Auntie Tiwa, I want to be like you." She smiled and responded, "No, be better than me." That became her silent mission, to lift others without noise. When the world called her a legend. By the time people began calling her a legend, Tiwa had already lived many lifetimes in one. She had been the underdog, the backup singer, the struggling immigrant, the broken wife, the proud mother, the global superstar. Only few artists ever live all those chapters and survive them. One newspaper headline read, "Tiwa Savage, the woman who redefined African female music." She read it quietly and smiled. Love, private and unrushed. Unlike before, Tiwa became careful with her heart. She protected her emotions. She no longer rushed into love for the public. She learned that love should be peaceful, not loud. Sometimes she wondered if she would ever marry again. Other times, she simply enjoyed her independence. And she told herself, "I don't need another relationship to complete me. I am already whole." Her son, her strongest legacy. As Jamil grew older, he became more aware of his mother's influence. He saw how people respected her. He heard how crowds screamed her name. But at home, Tiwa remained just Mum. She attended school events. She checked his homework. She scolded him when necessary. One day, Jamil said, "Mummy, when I grow up, I want to protect you." Tears touched her eyes. That was the only award that truly mattered. A voice for African women. Tiwa began to speak boldly for women, on equality, respect, creativity, and freedom of expression. She openly criticized unfair treatment of women in the industry. Some supported her. Others attacked her. But she did not back down. She once said, "If my voice makes some people uncomfortable, that means it is working." And indeed, it worked. The queen who never stopped evolving. Year after year, Tiwa kept releasing music that proved she was not stuck in the past. She flowed with new sounds, younger producers, different cultures. She never acted bigger than anyone. She acted timeless. And that is the secret of legends. Her quiet struggles with faith and purpose. There were seasons when Tiwa questioned everything. Fame, success, wealth, even God. She asked quietly in prayers, "Why have I gone through so much?" But in time, the answer became clear. So many people were drawing strength from her wounds. Her pain had become purpose. The day she spoke to her younger self. In a late-night interview, Tiwa was asked, "If you could speak to the younger Tiwa in Lagos, what would you say?" She paused for a long time. Then she replied softly, "Don't be afraid. Everything you're dreaming of will happen, but not without scars." Still a student of life. Even with all her success, Tiwa never believed she had arrived completely. She kept learning. She kept improving. She kept growing. She believed that the day she stopped learning was the day her greatness would decline. And so she stayed humble. The legacy that will never die. Tiwa Savage's story is not just about music. It is about rising after shame, standing after heartbreak, believing after rejection, healing after storms. From Lagos to world stages. From backup singer to global icon. She proved that a girl with a voice can shake the world. And long after the music fades from speakers, her story will continue to live in hearts. The woman who outlived every storm. By now, Tiwa Savage had lived through storms that would have ended many careers. Public shame. Marriage collapse. Industry pressure. Betrayal. Loneliness. Online attacks. Yet she was still standing. Many people who once mocked her were now silent. Many who doubted her now quoted her as an example. One night after a successful concert, she stood alone backstage, looking at her reflection in the mirror. She whispered slowly, "You survived it all." That moment was not about fame. It was about victory over self-doubt. When peace finally found her. For the first time in many years, Tiwa felt true peace. Not the noisy happiness of applause, but the quiet joy of contentment. She spent more time with her family. She laughed more. She slept better. She stopped overworking herself. She finally understood that rest is not weakness, rest is wisdom. She had fought long enough. Now she allowed herself to breathe. The day Jamil made her cry. One evening, Jamil came home from school and handed her a paper. "Mummy, we were told to write about our hero." Tiwa smiled casually. But when she opened the paper and read the words, her hands began to shake. "My hero is my mother. She teaches me never to give up. When she sings, the world listens. When I fall, she lifts me. I want to grow up and make her proud." She broke down in tears. That night, Tiwa realized that no global award could ever compare to the honor of being her son's hero. A voice that changed generations. Years passed, but Tiwa's voice never lost relevance. New generations kept discovering her music. Young girls found courage through her story. Music schools used her journey to teach perseverance. Women quoted her interviews to encourage boldness. Single mothers found strength through her survival. She had become more than a musician. She had become a movement. The queen without a crown. Tiwa never called herself a queen. But the streets did. The fans did. The industry did. Africa did. Not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. She ruled not with pride, but with scars. Her greatest fear, her greatest faith. In a quiet moment of reflection, Tiwa once admitted, "My greatest fear was failing publicly. But my greatest faith was that God would not abandon me." And truly, every time she fell, something invisible lifted her back up. The woman who refused to be broken. No matter what life threw at her, Tiwa refused to become bitter. She chose strength over shame, healing over hatred, purpose over pain. She never let her past define her ending. When the world finally understood her. At a major African music award ceremony, the host said, "Tonight, we honor a woman who carried Africa on her voice and pain on her shoulders. Tiwa Savage." The hall rose in a standing ovation. She walked slowly to the stage. Not as a broken girl from Isail Eco, but as a woman who conquered her world. Her final message to the world. In her closing speech that night, Tiwa said words that shook the hearts of millions. "If you are broken, rise. If you are ashamed, rise. If you are tired, rise. If you are afraid, rise. Because I did not make it here because life was easy. I made it here because I refused to quit." There was silence. Then thunderous applause. The story that will never end. Tiwa Savage's story does not end on a stage. It continues in every girl who dares to dream. Every woman who dares to rise after heartbreak. Every voice that dares to sing after silence. From Lagos to the world, her name will remain a symbol of strength, survival, and sound. And when history speaks of African music, her voice will never be missing.